accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court.
No, fuck that.
Courtrooms are meant to be places of order, justice, and restraint. But what happens when the very people on trial explode into sudden violence, turning hearings into scenes of chaos? From vicious attacks on judges to outbursts fueled by rage or drugs, these shocking incidents reveal the unpredictable danger lurking behind courtroom walls. Today, we dive into 5 disturbing cases where defendants lost control and shattered the silence of justice. Buckle up, because these moments are anything but routine. On January 3, 2024, a Las Vegas courtroom turned into chaos in seconds. Deobra Redden, a 30-year-old man being sentenced for felony battery, was standing before Judge Mary Kay Holthus. As she began denying him probation, Redden suddenly snapped.
I would like to tell the courts here, based on my criminal history.
Without warning, he leaped over the judge's bench, a full 4 feet high, and tackled the judge mid-sentence. In front of stunned courtroom staff, Redden began punching Judge Holthus while shouting profanities.
In accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court.
No, fuck that.
A courtroom marshal and several staff members rushed to stop him. One marshal was injured badly enough to require stitches. The judge also suffered minor injuries, but thankfully survived. Redden was immediately restrained and taken into custody. Days later, he admitted to authorities he was having a bad day and intended to kill the judge. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was reportedly off his medication during the attack. As a result, Redden faced 13 new charges. He was sentenced to 26 to 65 years in prison. This was the scene during a hearing for Webb, a man already accused of 2 counts of attempted murder after allegedly running over jail employees in 2009. The presiding judge, Vanessa Dixon, had just announced she would recuse herself from Webb's trial due to a personal connection. Suddenly, Webb rises from the dock. His face contorts, not with remorse, but raw defiance. He steps forward and spits directly at Judge Dixon's face, a shocking act of contempt and violence inside this hallowed courtroom. The reaction is instant. Judge Dixon, stunned, recoils, a powerful image of authority under attack. Detention Center Webb was shot with beanbag bullets and even hit in the neck with a pepper ball in retaliation. Webb swung a metal telephone box at a corrections officer. He was charged again for his actions and sentenced to 15 years in prison. This wasn't just an act of contempt. It was an escalation in a pattern of violence and defiance. A dangerous reminder: courtroom respect can shatter in a second. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was electric. Joseph Zieler, 61, shackled and flanked by bailiffs, had just entered. He was facing sentencing after a jury had convicted him for the brutal 1990 murders and sexual assault of 11-year-old Robin Cornell and her babysitter, Lisa Story.
2-year-old Lisa Story. The jury recommended the death penalty. He is also charged with harassing a witness in that case.
Now, Joseph Zieler was actually arrested for another crime, and that's how detectives were able to get his fingerprints and DNA samples. His sample was put into a database called CODIS, and that database also stores unknown DNA samples, including those from the Cornell Story case. Now, when the system ran, that's when detectives got a hit linking Zieler to this 26-year-old murder case.
A cold case reopened by DNA years later. He glared around. His teeth, marked with the word killer, flashed as he demanded the courtroom cameras be turned off. Zieler motioned toward his defense lawyer, Kevin Shirley, hunched close to listen. In that split second, Zieler lashed out, his elbow snapping straight into Shirley's face. Bailiffs sprang into action, wrestling him to the ground within seconds. The gavel had yet to fall, but chaos ruled.
What's that?
In the aftermath, Zieler was more heavily shackled and placed in the corner of the courtroom, isolated and under stricter security. Moments later, the judge announced the sentence: death, the ultimate punishment for the murders of Robin and Lisa.
Therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live.
Daniel Stewart Berry, 21, handcuffed and under escort, was being marched toward the court. He'd been arrested on February 7th after robbing a convenience store, putting the clerk in a headlock and grabbing just $20. Now, as he walked, something snapped. Suddenly, Berry turned, raised his forehead, and headbutted the Union County deputy in the face. Glasses flew, and a sickening crack echoed. The deputy's nose shattered. The courtroom escort rolled him to the floor and wrestled him down in seconds. Chaos ensued. Berry had also assaulted a jail worker the night before when she delivered his dinner.
What's up? You! Yeah! What's up? You! Yeah!
Part of a growing pattern of violent outbursts, authorities later revealed Berry had been using gravel, also known as the synthetic drug flakka, fueling his aggression. In one violent motion, Berry transformed a routine court appearance into a bloody confrontation, breaking a deputy's nose and doubling down on his charges. His erratic behavior, possibly drug-fueled, raises ominous questions. How far is too far in courtroom security? What happens when you get into a wrestling match with the judge? That's exactly what happened in Pike County Justice Court, Mississippi, when Sidney Newsome, facing a domestic violence charge, completely lost control during his court hearing. The case was being heard in the Southern District by Judge Aubrey Rimes. At first, Newsome appeared to be in a surprisingly good mood. He calmly reviewed some paperwork while in court. But then, things started to shift. An altercation with a court officer seemed to agitate Newsome. When he was asked to sign some documents, the situation escalated. He became furious, shouting and arguing directly with Judge Rimes. The judge, maintaining order, instructed officers to remove Newsome from the courtroom. But as Newsome was being escorted out, he snapped. First, he grabbed a stack of papers and threw them at the judge. As the officer tried to subdue him, Newsome broke free, grabbed a telephone, and hurled it toward Judge Rimes. At this point, the courtroom was in full chaos.